Dr. Renee Sunday. I am the Kingdom Builder. My team is going to let me know if we're good here with the sound. It sounds pretty good. Sound like a little echo, but let's make sure, social media keep you humble. You be out here talking and nobody hear you, okay? But as you come in, everyone that's here live, if you're listening later, just say hashtag replay. You know how we do it. Let me make sure they telling me we good. But I always like, excuse me, I always like to make sure YouTube is good because YouTube, it's always a delay with YouTube. So I always give it, if you ever doing a live, hold on a minute. Because YouTube, you'll be on all the social media, but you won't be on YouTube, okay? Okay, all right. My team said we good. They talk. But anyway, how you doing today? You doing okay? Yes, there's a lot going on in the world, but I always say you have to be positive. You have to be your own cheerleader because you know what? You never know the person right next to you. You never know the person that's right behind you in the car. You never know what they're going through. And we are our brothers and sisters keeper, right? We need to make sure that, what is it? I tell people, just say hello. You never know. That may be the only hello. That may be the only smile that someone receives in a day. I hope that's not true. I hope it's not true, but that's the way, unfortunate how things are. We want you to come in. I'm going to go on and type this in so we can get our amazing, I'm so excited. Our amazing guest, Dr. Ryan, is here. So excited, please. Okay. All right. Okay, we're going to get it started. And we're going to bring Dr. Ryan. Hi, Dr. Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing very good today. Thank you.
Great. Oh, he has a lot of books. So, we're going to have a good time. You don't want to see my bookshelves with an S, right? with Dr. Ryan Mullins. Welcome. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. And he does an amazing thing in this world. It's so awesome. But let our guests know, let the people in the audience know the amazing things you're doing in your life.
Mm-hmm. So I have a PhD in theology and then what's called a doctoral habilitation in dogmatics, which in the German world is like a step above a PhD. But so what I do is I teach theology and philosophy at a university called the University of Lucerne in Switzerland, and then Palm Beach Atlantic University in Florida. I write a lot on the nature of God, God's relationship to time, God's emotions, a lot of different topics within Christian thought.
Wow, now that can go a lot of. Well, congratulations, first of all. You've done an amazing achievement. But let's dive into this a little bit because a lot of people. Oh my God, that's so amazing. The emotions and the nature of God. If it's okay, can I ask this? How did you get into this? Because this is so. I guess I would say is being from the South, being really near to your heart, because you want to know how God, his, emotions, and then you want to know the nature, you want to know that so you will be able to have a true, I'm going to say the word true, but really what I mean is intimate relationship with him.
Exactly. That's what got me into this was this question of, does God care about me? Like, I've never doubted the existence of God, but, a lot of people, we have struggles of faith. And for me, one of the questions was, does God care about me? And then that got into a question of what exactly is God like and what are God's emotions like? Because on some views, God's emotions are only about himself. God only loves himself. God only cares about himself. And God's in a state of pure happiness that's only about himself and has nothing to do with the world. And I thought, this doesn't really look like what I'm seeing in the Bible. So let's take a deeper look at this so-called traditional understanding of God and see what's going on here.
Wow. That's it. You're right. Ladies and gentlemen, you read the Bible. I think when you read it once, read it twice, read it for the fourth, fifth time. Every time you read it, you get a different revelation. So that is so powerful when you say that. Let's talk about this, because I hear it's a lot of, especially young people and kids, because I have to teach sometime at that level versus adults. When you talk about emotions, what are we just talking about? Are we talking about the same similar emotions we have as humans that we know of? Because we have, sometimes people may not have experienced all the different spectrums of being emotional. I'm gonna say that in quotes.
Yeah. Yes. Let's talk about what an emotion is, and so this might help. So an emotion is a felt evaluation of a situation. So your emotions, they kind of like mentally represent your situation. So if you're watching a movie, your emotion is about that movie. And maybe it's a scary movie. So you're feeling really scared, your heart's just kind of pounding in your chest. You're like, oh my gosh, this is very scary. So that's your evaluation of the situation. And then there's something that it feels like to have that evaluation. So if it's good, it's bad, it's scary, it's exciting, there's something it feels like to have it. So the emotion has to have that evaluation, and it has to have the feeling that is attached to it. And so if we want to say God has emotions, then what you're saying is God has evaluations. He's evaluating the situations going on in the world, and he has certain feelings that are associated with that go along with that. That's the big idea.
Wow, that's powerful. Well, let me ask you, because I know on a human level, and if it's okay, I love doing a lot of comparison, contrast.
Right.
And of course, we know God is, so
Right.
He's all in all. He's our great example, which we'll never be that,
Right.
perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we ain't gonna put that in quotes, the real perfect. Okay. Because we'll never get there. But in regards of the evaluation, and I guess we have to be very real, as the kids say. What they say, keep it 100, or what them kids say now. Yeah. The way one person evaluates can be totally kind of different, or a different lens of looking at it in regards to somebody else. Talk about that, because I think that's a great conversation that we need to have, especially nowadays.
Yeah. So a lot of people who do philosophy of emotion, what they'll point out is that your emotions can be true or false, or they can be irrational or rational. And it depends on how you're making the evaluation. Because you're right. Like, a lot of times when you're looking at a situation, you can disagree with somebody else massively, and that can cause all sorts of controversy. So let me give you some examples of this. So I'm living in Philadelphia at the moment, and there's people are angry here. They're very, very angry. So if you're walking down the street and somebody bumps into you, you might feel like, oh gosh, like I should be really angry about this situation. And you might be tempted to start screaming. But that shouldn't be the only thing in your evaluation, though. Other things should be, do I care about my own life? So when I lived in Atlanta, it was much safer there, where I lived in Atlanta. And if somebody bumped into me on the street, I would be angry, but I wouldn't be scared of, are they going to shoot me if I say, excuse me, what are you doing? Whereas here in Philly, like, no. So there's a lot of things going on into this evaluation. Now, when you have a case where you think someone's emotional response is wrong, that happens all the time. We tell people, you need to calm down. Like, what you're doing is inappropriate. But then you also have those moments where you say to someone, I understand exactly what you're going through. I would feel the same way. What all these different kinds of things that we say, what they're doing is it's pointing out that we do think that people's emotions can be right or wrong. We do think they can really fit the situation or be just completely off base. And what you have to do when you've got some sort of big disagreement is you have to sit down and talk it out and try to figure out what the reasons are for why you're feeling the way that you do. Which is fine, because we do that in our everyday lives. We do that in our relationships. We do that in counseling. We do that in all sorts of things. But that's just part of what it means to be an emotional being.
Wow, that is so interesting. But let me ask you this, because someone over at YouTube already have asked the question.
Okay, good.
Well, in regards of what we're saying about us as human, how do we now look at that in regards of what about God.
Correct. Yeah.
Mm.
So your emotions, if they can be rational or irrational, well, you want to be careful which emotions you think God has, because you want to say God's emotions are always going to be perfectly rational because God's perfect. So you don't want God to have irrational emotions. So part of the idea would be whatever emotions he has, it's going to fit the situation just right, in a way that you and I often fail to do so. But there's a bit more to the story. So sometimes your emotions can be not just irrational; they could also be immoral. Like you could really delight in something that's just gross and sinful, or you could see something really disturbing that a virtuous person would be upset by, but you're just like, I don't care, and you're like, oh, well, that's gross. So God's not going to have any emotions like that. He's not going to have any emotions that are immoral. So his emotions are always going to be perfectly rational and perfectly moral.
That baby, that's so soothing. The way you talk about it is so amazing. So when because you do this, ladies and gentlemen, he's the doctorate. So you teach other people this, but of course you know you believe in what you're teaching in regards
Yeah.
of sharing it to other people. How I'm interested, this is just me. How do you really approach that when you teaching so many people? And you, I've looked at your background, so many people that come from so many different ways of life. And you know, they have been through so much, you know, environmental, you know how that go,
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff that they dealt with even on their family life or even on the individual. And then we've all came through this last this pandemic, which have changed a lot of people emotional as well. How do you even you know, really start talking to someone or even teaching others that have been from so many different backgrounds?
That's a really good question, Renee. So I did a lot of work on philosophy of time and God's relationship to time, and
Uh-huh.
people, their eyes kind of glaze over a little bit when I talk about that because it's so abstract. Whereas as soon as I started working on emotions, people have an initial reaction of what they think about God and emotion, like immediately. They've got these intuitions, they've got opinions immediately. And so a lot of times I just kind of start from there of going, oh, well, tell me what you think, before I
Mhm.
start getting into some of the different theories about here's what one person says about God's emotional life, here's what another person does. So a lot of times it's just starting with, do you think God cares about you? And it doesn't matter if the person is an atheist or agnostic, or if they're Christian, or if they're, different Abrahamic faith or Hindu. They've got opinions on that question immediately. Like,
Wow.
yeah. So when I first started looking at some of this stuff, I was talking to some people who were atheist, and I was like, yeah, there's this view. It's very, very traditional in the West that says God only loves himself. And they're just like, Ryan, you have to tell these people they're wrong. And I'm like, you're an atheist. You don't think God, why do you care? And they're like, because this matters. It matters. These people need to know they're wrong. Like if God exists, God's definitely going to be the kind of being that cares about you. So so it wasn't too hard to be able to teach people about these things because they have opinions immediately, and I can just kind of go from there.
Now that's kind of even interesting, even to that fact, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh wow, this what I want to know, because this what, you know, ladies and gentlemen, you know I'm an anesthesiologist as
Mhm.
well, but I went right back to think about how, you know, it's so much research, which I love research and all the different things that we know how what lights up, I guess we'll say, in our brain when they take different studies, different x-rays, different, you know, MRI, you know, all those kind of things. So what in regards of that,
Mhm.
what lights up in our brain in regards of, because I'm sure when you teach people their, we're gonna say, views
Mhm.
change, and then
Mhm.
when they views change, you know, because you know how they go to awareness, and then that may even change how they really believe in that.
Mhm.
How important is that? Because you know, now we finding out that so many things light up our inside. I say our
Right.
insides because you know whatever's inside gonna come out eventually.
Yeah. I do not, I'm not an expert on this area, but I mean, the stuff I've read, it's clear that the things going on with inside your body have a
Mhm.
big impact on your emotions, but it's also the case that your emotions have a big impact on what goes on in your body. So if you're very stressed out about a situation, that's you're going to feel it in your body like the next day, especially if it's long term. I mean, that can have serious long-term effects if on your physical health. So there's some sort of symbiosis between the mind and the brain. There's a constant back and forth about the way your body is affects the way you think about things and feel in your emotions, and then the way you think about the world affects your body. But the nitty-gritty details of such things, that's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I had to bring that up because I know it's so much the brain. But this what someone just said to my team. It's so funny. My team talking in my ear. Someone on LinkedIn actually asked a question, and this is very powerful. In regards of our emotions, what we've been through, and they're talking about, of course, the pandemic.
Oh, sure.
Has that changed? This is actually their question. Has that changed the way you actually are instructing at your university and how you teaching people? Has that affect that? And if it has, can you speak on that briefly?
Yeah, so I was in a fortunate situation where I had a purely research position when the pandemic happened. So I did not have to all of a sudden just switch from being in person to being online. But but I was being interviewed all the time and asked to speak for a lot of my friends, their classes all over the world. And so I got very accustomed to just sitting in front of a camera and just speaking on Zoom all the time. And so I got used to that, whereas all my friends, they were just forced into it and didn't know how to do these interviews and how to talk to people. So that had a big impact on how I started teaching when I got the job at the University of Lucerne in Switzerland, because it's an online master's program. So I already kind of knew, okay, well, this is a bit of the game here of how to do this online. So a lot of the way I started changing things was, instead of just doing like a typical lecture, I would start doing things more in terms of conversations or interviews. So I might have somebody, sometimes I might feed them, here's the questions you need to ask me, because this is what we have to get through for this lecture. But that'd be kind of the idea, is more of an interview, more of a conversation, because I think that's a bit easier to get into when you're watching something online. Whereas when you're in person, it's just, I can feed off the room a lot easier when I'm doing a lecture. I can do a mixture of stand-up comedy and a lecture if I want to, and that's fine, which is interesting, because I did a stand-up comedy show about God's emotional life in a couple different countries. I've done it, and sometimes it's worked well, sometimes it's not worked at all. But yeah, like the online format, it's better if I have somebody to do as like a dialogue partner instead of just a normal lecture.
Yeah, because I think, me personally, I have to have more hype when I'm on Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because you can, like you say, you can pick one person, and then it always go back to what mom and dad taught us, and y'all might have had this as well. My mom and dad used to say, of course not as a child, I had to put that out there, but they would say, always imagine someone that was a clown in the audience, that they were dressed up as a clown, and that would make you always brought you joy, right?
Yeah.
And so that. So that sometimes helps me when I was in the early stages of teaching and stuff in front of a lot of people.
Right.
But the whole thing is to be yourself. And we want to transition just a little, because I want to make time for this, because somebody else just sent a question in from YouTube. You talked about the emotions and the nature of God. And forgive me if I'm overstepping and asking this, because I'm going to ask it the way they said.
Sure.
There's so many different, I'll say religions, to keep it kind of simple, not to say one or the other, but different religions out there. And we know in the Bible, it talks a lot about nature. I mean, me personally, I love nature. I like looking at the trees, the animals. They tell us a lot of things, especially you spoke of Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta right now. The weather's kind of acting up, and all the animals have gone to rest. Okay. So that's giving me a hint to go and rest, right? But talk about that a little bit, because sometimes we don't really admire nature to know really how amazing nature is, and of course how amazing we are as humans, but just to be able to appreciate the nature of God and his just amazingness. I don't even think we have really a good word to say it, right?
Yeah. So what you're bringing up is a few different kinds of things. So
Yes.
one is, what can I know about the existence and nature of God by looking at the natural world? And what you see in the Bible is the claim that God has revealed himself in various ways through nature, through prophets, and then ultimately through Jesus Christ. And the reflection on just the natural world, it gives you reasons to think that God exists, and then maybe you can start making some kind of rational inference as to what God is like. And this is not just a project that Christians do. This is actually a global project. Every religion you will find across the world has engaged in this sort of practice. So within Indian philosophies, like Hinduism, for example, all the different branches of Hinduism, they have a long history of doing this exact project of trying to look at the natural world and go, there's a beauty and order here. And that gives me reason to think that God exists. And it gives me reason to think that there's some sort of being that's all powerful, perfectly rational, and appreciates beauty and order. So this is a very human thing to do. It's not specific to just one religion, but we see in the Bible that God says, "Yep, I revealed myself through the heavens and through the earth. That all of nature declares my glory."
I just love that. I knew you were gonna say so. You're in the right place. You're in your right purpose because oh my god, you make it seem so so nice. We don't. Me and you could talk all night. But let us know anything that we should have probably addressed that I forgive me that I got all excited about
Sure.
other things. But tell us any other thing, and then please tell us how we can contact you, how we
Mhm.
can actually. He has a beautiful website. The website is so beautiful. Whoever you guys did a great job over there on your website, and it's mobile friendly. I love it. But how we can get in touch with you, how we can
Mhm.
book you, and of course support you on social media as well.
Of course. So the one thing we should talk about before all that is empathy. So this is was a really odd thing. So when you're reading the Bible, you see claims over and over again that God is rich in empathy. God has lots of compassion. God has lots of mercy. And a lot of Old Testament scholars will say that is kind of the heart of the biblical understanding of ethics and morality is compassion and empathy and mercy. But when you look at the Christian tradition, there are a lot of thinkers who say God does not literally have empathy or compassion. And myself and lot of other theologians will go, that's just the worst thing in the world. No, God has a great deal of empathy for you. How much empathy is up for debate because it might be some things that God just cannot empathize with because they're immoral or just irrational. But one of the nice things about God having this maximal empathy, or like this all-encompassing sort of empathy, is when you think about moments in your life where you're feeling very alone. No one understands what it's like to be you, and that is a source of frustration, a source of loneliness, of despair. But when you reflect on the biblical understanding of God, that God is rich in empathy, then there's at least one person who knows what it's like to be you, and that's God. That's your heavenly Father. So I think that has a big impact on how you should see the world, and hopefully a big impact on your relationship with God. So yeah, that's what I thought we should talk about before ending. But yeah, so the other one was where to find me. So my website is called rtmullins.com. You can find links to a lot of the published articles I have there. You can find links to the different books I've written, some books that are forthcoming as well. And then I also have a podcast that I do called the Reluctant Theologian Podcast.
Wow, well, we got to get that to the podcast. Okay, we got. Our team will come back at but we can get to it from your website, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, okay. Because wait a minute, but let's hold on a minute. We can't
Okay,
shut
sure.
down. Tell
Okay.
us a little bit more about your podcast.
Yeah. So what it was so my wife is a scientist. She's a molecular biologist,
Oh,
and
wow.
she was asking me all these questions about philosophy and theology, and then I started getting asked to do some interviews, and she's like, "You should just do this yourself as well. Like, I mean, you've got a voice for radio." That's what my television professor in undergrad told me was, "Ryan, you have a voice for radio." And I had really long hair at the time, so I could tell that means you should not be doing television news. You don't have the look for it, and that's fine. Uh, but she's like, yeah, just go for it. Just like, let's do this. And so we bought some equipment, and then we started interviewing different philosophers and theologians and scientists on just the big questions of life, and the mysteries of the universe. And then also I really like heavy metal. So every once in a while we interview some people about heavy metal music.
The people, they said love it. Let me highlight that. That is amazing. Because I bet you and your wife have great conversation.
We do.
Oh my Lord.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you another question. This was because it just came kind of heavy on me just now. Where just any advice where we should be right now? I counsel people a lot, and one thing I can say is at every age group. At one time you could see seasoned people, when we say seasoned, 65, 70, you see that they have, they retiring, enjoying life. Not saying people are not doing that, but what I have noticed is on every level, I mean, we can see even in the world, some young people are doing things to, take their life, take somebody else. And this, this suicide is all up.
Yes,
in every age group. I guess that's
every age group and across all the countries.
Yeah. And so do you think if we really, because what you do is amazing. I think it would clear up, this is my opinion, would clear up a lot of the questions and mysteries that people have, that they'll be able to really appreciate, I'm going to say, life. And not just human life, but life in general. Talk about that, because I think that it's a lot in that.
There is. So one of the things we experienced during the pandemic was, so there's the difference. So you can be alone, but when you're alone, you could either have solitude, where you can gain strength from it and reflect on life and whatever is true, beautiful, and good. But when you're alone, you could also experience loneliness. And I think one of the things that we collectively experienced during the pandemic was a deep sense of loneliness that many of us had never felt on that level. And that is one of many contributing factors to a huge rise in mental health crisis. So I was in the United Kingdom at the time, and the mental health services was just completely overrun. I mean, they just could not handle all the cases. And a big part of the depression and the suicide and everything, it was completely related to the loneliness and the sense of despair that people had from that. And so as I've been thinking about like the nature of emotions and empathy in particular, just the value of being able to empathize with someone else in a meaningful way is so important to not just developing a relationship, but for yourself as well. Like it has a lot of different kinds of values. And so now that we are out on the other end of the pandemic, trying to figure out how to rebuild those relationships and really engage with empathy, I think is deeply important. I think that's one of the things we need to do. So across generations, learning how to empathize with the younger generations needing to snap out of and empathize with the older generations as well. And then not just simply empathizing with each other, but figuring out how to understand differences and appreciate differences so that we won't be so polarized. Because in America right now, the way that people are polarized is on a scale that I've never experienced before. Every time I step back into this country and see it just feels more and more divided, the thing that keeps coming into my mind is there is a complete lack of empathy here. No one is even interested in trying to understand people who are different from themselves. And I think that's very dangerous. So what I think we need right now is to try to just have a little bit of empathy for each other, to try to understand each other.
So much. I want to thank you for taking time just out of your busy schedule to be and have a conversation with us. But we want to thank you for being in the right place. I really feel the passion, the joy, and the excitement you have for what you're doing to help this world to be a better place. So thank you and your wife for doing what you guys are doing in life.
Thank you so much for having me on today. This was good.
You're welcome. That ladies, tell us one more time your
Mhm.
website so we can go over there. We got to be on that podcast to be able
Right.
to listen to that.
So yeah, so rtmullins.com, and the show is called the Reluctant Theologian Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, you can find it on iTunes, anywhere you can download podcast, you can find it.
All right. Well, we thank you so much again. Woo, ooh, people that my team said that but LinkedIn, LinkedIn is funny. They said, wow, he's been so powerful. But we'll make sure we'll post your information again so we can support you in the things you do. But thank you.
Right. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, woo, wasn't that powerful? Woo! Amen. He got me all excited. I like to think about stuff like that. But the thing is, he was Dr. Mullins was very on it. We need to have empathy for other people. We need to understand what they're going through. Because guess what? 9 times out of 10, you going through the same thing they going through. So by you sharing and talking with somebody else, you can make this world a better place. I believe you have to do 3 things. We have to believe, we have to trust, and we have to walk it out. And what we walking out our purpose and our purpose. I can't be in my purpose if you're not in your purpose. It does take the whole village. And we love you so much. We love you. Well, we'll see you next time. I am Dr. Renee Sunday. I am the Kingdom Builder. If you want to know more about me, please go to reneesunday.com or DM me on any of the platforms. I love you. Can't do nothing about it, but God loves you best. He loves you best. Talk to you later.